Well, I think it's fair to say, as weekends go, that sucked. But we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it over the next however long this is. It is the West Midlands Football Podcast. It's myself, Ben Ellis, and Dom Phillips this week. Gab was going to join us, but he's had to sort of pull out at the last minute. So we'll go into forensic detail on what went wrong for Aston Villa, and we'll just touch on the other teams as well because
Yeah,
we're slightly underrepresented. But yeah, as far as all of our league teams are concerned, defeats all around. It began Wolves by a controversial goal to nil. I didn't see any of that game, but we'll get onto it in the next few minutes for sure. And then at 5:30 in the Premier League on Saturday, Aston Villa nil, Tottenham 4. Now, Dom, when we were kind of previewing the action for this week, we said we might as well not talk about it because Villa won't lay a glove on Tottenham. The result would suggest that that's the case, but for 45 minutes, Villa were really impressive.
I think for 45 minutes, Tottenham couldn't lay a glove on us. I think it was the other way around. I think Gerrard said after the game, and I'd agree with him, that first 45 minutes is some of the best football that we've played since he's took over and in a long, long time. We were aggressive. We were first to every first ball, first to every second ball. Coutinho was just finding space and pulling strings, and chance after chance after chance was created. And it's almost frustrating as a Villa fan, to be honest, because ever since we've come up, it feels like a consistent theme of our team has been, if you don't take the chances that you get in the first half, if you don't take the chances that you get early on and get into a 1-0 lead or a 2-0 lead, especially over these top sides, then later in the game, they're going to get their act together because that's what top clubs, top players, and top managers do, and they'll punish you for it. And that's exactly what happened. Obviously, in the first half, it wasn't ideal with Ezri Konsa, for me, giving away that first goal. I know that it's a brilliant finish by Son, but as a defender, I really don't think you can just head down the ball to Harry Kane. He's just waiting for you. I definitely don't think Ezri Konsa had his best game in a Villa shirt. But besides that, we were brilliant in the first half. Ollie Watkins has a free header that he should score. There's an inventive set piece from the training ground, Austin McPhee, where Danny Ings nearly scores an acrobatic volley, and you think he wants to test the keeper. He has one at the back post that he nearly scores. Jacob Ramsey goes on a brilliant run, and Hugo Lloris had to make that save, but also two or three other top saves in that half. And it's really frustrating that we haven't come away with more, to be honest. But then, saying that, in the second half, we were completely tepid, and just Spurs just ran through us, didn't they? Can't hear you, Ben. You've muted yourself.
Thank you, Dom. Apologies. Yeah, you kind of got you've kind of got the feeling at half time that we missed the boat here, and we
Mm.
probably aren't going to be as intense as we were first half. And all Spurs have got to do is sit tight, hit us on the break. You got Son, you got Kane linking up. There is a deadlier duo, particularly on the counter attack, as any team you'll find in, particularly in the Premier League, maybe even in Europe if they're on song. Tottenham. It reminded me, and we're trying to look at the bigger picture here. It reminded me of the game against Spurs 2 seasons ago under Dean Smith, which I think Villa should have come away with something in that game. Ended up losing it 2-1 in the last minute. You know, it's a really positive display and performance, but the end result is defeat. And the question is, a lot of money's been spent. There's been a change of manager. Are Villa any further forward? It's 2 years on.
I think we're further forward 2 years on. I don't think we're much further forward a year on. But I think that there's a lot of context has to be taken place when you're analysing that. I mean, we've had a massive turnover of players in the summer again, which is never ideal, largely because of the sale of Jack Grealish, which has meant that we've had to go from being a one-man team to fitting in loads of other players. Some of those players haven't hit the ground running. Some of those players have been struggling with injury issues throughout as well. Leon Bailey's the main example that springs to mind. He's definitely not delivered on what we hoped of him so far. I hope that he can kick on next season if he's given the chance to stay. But he's a player that I think we've missed the sort of the speed and the power and the just cutting in off the left and doing something. We've got Coutinho who likes to cutting in off the right and doing something. Coutinho can occupy that left side, but we needed something on the opposite flank, and I don't think we have it. And the other thing with that as well is that you've got a managerial change mid-season. We've gone from being a 4-2-3-1 sort of counter-attacking team to now trying to control teams and play a different style of football. It's a lot more tactical. It's a lot more about control instead of hitting teams on the counter and playing with playing a tactical style that I think sometimes asks more than the players are capable of. And whether you think that's Gerrard's fault for not adapting the tactics or the previous people in charge's fault for not getting good enough players to play a certain brand of football, I don't know. But what I do think is that it's obviously 4 losses on the spin, and that's not ideal. But I think Gerrard deserves a chance to get some of his players in. Some of the local media's been reporting that Joe Gomez and Yves Bissouma are the kind of players that we could be seeing in the summer, and not be encouraging signings like that. So I think with a real injection of quality into our squad, we could go on next season. But as you were alluding to, Ben, it almost feels like every season we're coming out of the season going, "Oh, next season's going to be the season we get to that next level," and it's still yet to happen.
Absolutely. Interesting if we want sort of Steven Gerrard to deliver, and we sort of think that he's looking at changing the style and he wants Villa to control games. That means more technically adept footballers who are more comfortable in possession. They're going to cost a lot of money. Okay, we can compete on the money side for once, with the owners that we've got. Certainly compared with half of Randy Lerner and even Doug Ellis. So the money's fine. Will Steven Gerrard be able to identify these players and B attract them to come to Aston Villa?
That's a difficult two-pronged question right there. I'd say that on the first part, talking about the recruitment, obviously we had Jesus Pitar, Garcia Pitar, Suso as our old sporting director. He was done away with. He didn't get on with Purslow, is sort of the rumours that came out of the club. We've had Johan Langer in the role for a while now, and he's sort of revamped the recruitment side of things. And I wonder whether, with Gerrard as manager now, him and Purslow, who are close mates, might try and pursue a different kind of recruitment policy to the one that we've seen for the last couple of years. Will that see Johan Langer lose his job? We don't know. But I would expect there to be some level of review into the recruitment side of things at Villa in the summer, not just in terms of the staff that are there, but also in terms of the players that we tried to sign. In terms of we will be able to identify them, I think if we stick to a similar structure that we have now, I do believe in our recruitment structure. You've got people who have proven to be very good at this, people like Rob McKenzie, who were instrumental in the rise of Leicester City, for example. I think we've got good people in those positions. I also think we've got Steven Gerrard and his contacts in the game and his own knowledge of football. And the crucial thing with Gerrard is about attracting these players is that we have already attracted Luke Dean, who I thought was brilliant yesterday. He kept getting up that left flank. He looks a little bit slow at times, maybe, but he just kept putting in really good balls that if there's a striker attacking them are ending in a goal every time. And obviously the big one, Philippe Coutinho. And I don't think any Villa fan would have dreamed of getting Philippe Coutinho in while Dean Smith was manager. We know that the Gerrard connection was absolutely instrumental to that. Luca Dean also said that the Gerrard connection was instrumental to his joining. So I think Gerrard's already proven that he can attract those players. What I do think we need, though, is to get a couple of wins on the board to not finish 14th in the league, and then suddenly some of these players are going, "Look, Steve, I know we're mates. I know you're putting a load of wages on the table, but you aren't getting any better as a club. So why should I join you?" And that's the fear.
That's my concern. That's my concern as well. Saw a lot on social media yesterday about the areas in which Villa need to strengthen and striker, top priority striker. Danny Ings is a proven 20 goal a season Premier League striker. So why isn't that working?
this is the thing that's difficult. With our two strikers yesterday, I think any Villa fan would agree that if we had two different strikers on the pitch or two better strikers on the pitch in better form, we would have been. I mean, I said at half time this should be 4-1 here, the score, and I stand by that now. Um, but as you say, Watkins got 14 goals for us last season. He's he's an irregular England international. Danny Ings is a storied England international, ex-Liverpool player at Southampton. As you say, he's banging a lot of goals in. I just don't know if they're Steven Gerrard's kind of striker. I don't know what's wrong with them because, as you say, there's a lot of those chances that if I think happened 6 months to a year ago, Danny Ings would have put them away without even thinking about it. Especially that one, and I noticed the same one. You'll think that one where the ball comes to him, Watkins flicks it on, and he's there at the back post. Danny Ings, who with his record, he never misses those, and I don't know whether yesterday was just a bit of a blip and we sort of have to overlook it and go, look, strikers are confidence players as well, and that's another factor. But it's definitely a concern. Although I would say that I think we might be able to solve some of these issues from within because I do think Cameron Archer and Keenan Davis, especially the former, deserve a bit of a shout out on this podcast. Cameron Archer, who's only been out on loan to Solihull Moors before, come off the bench a lot, played on the wing a fair bit, has gone out on loan to Preston in January and has just been banging the goals in. The goal he scored at the weekend was brilliant. He found space, turned at it, ran at the defender, beat him, beat a second defender and slammed it in the far corner. And it's that kind of finishing and that kind of quality that Villa are lacking in the forward line. And as you say, it's a complete conundrum as to why two players of the sort of reputation and level of Danny Ings and Ollie Watkins aren't producing it week in, week out, because if there were, I think our results would be very different.
We're going to talk about Keenan Davis a bit later on because he was involved in a key incident, a flashpoint, shall we say, in
Yeah.
in the Championship. So no game next week. It would have been Liverpool. So small mercies as Liverpool are in the FA Cup, and then it's Leicester on the return to that. Obviously, probably next week we'll look more in depth at what they can do against Leicester. But if they were to lose at, would Dean Smith be within his rights to say, "Hang on, that's five on the bounce. I was out the door."
To an extent, yeah, but I personally I don't think so. I think the critical thing in now is that Dean Smith had 2.5 3 years. I know that there was things he had to deal with, but he built his own squad. He was in charge. Pretty much every player that is in that squad now, Dean Smith signed, and Dean Smith signed with a plan in mind. He planned everything. He orchestrated everything, and during those 5 losses, the football was very much worse than it was and it has been under Gerrard. I mean, that 45 minutes against Spurs, brilliant. Some of the football we played at Molineux, some of it was all right, you know. Whereas under under Smith, sorry, the Arsenal defeat, which is before they hit their stride, the Southampton defeat and the West Ham defeat are three of the worst displays I've seen by a Villa team in the Premier League. They were hopeless. And I don't think it's got that bad with Gerrard. I just think we're struggling in the two most critical thirds of the pitch for not making mistakes and putting the ball in the net. And the midfield is failing to get any control to make sure it goes into the latter third. That's where the ball heads. But as I say, I think the critical thing is Gerrard hasn't had time to build his own squad. He hasn't had a pre-season. And if you take into context the fact that his Rangers team took 3 years to win the league, he took multiple windows to assess and to improve the team gradually and build something sustainable, as opposed to doing what. Well, I mean, I think Burnley's a bit of a harsh example, but Wolves under Nuno initially went on a big run and then fell off, and Burnley went on a big run and then fell off. And I really think that Villa are cognizant of that happening, and they want to build something that can just gradually build its way. And I know that the fear might then be the owners losing patience, but I think we have to focus on building slowly and sustainably. And I think that Gerrard is the man who can do that, given time and given his own players. So I do feel bad for Dean Smith, but I don't think he's going to mind too much after today's result, to be honest.
A lot of paper talk about who could be leaving the club. The stories are around. It's going to be a battle if Villa want to land Calvin Phillips. As you mentioned, there's Yves Bissouma. players leaving Aston Villa. We mentioned this on the last couple of podcasts. We think there's going to be quite a big turnover of players in the summer, and there's been a paper talk this morning. Depending on who eventually gets the job at Manchester United, it looks like it's going to be Den Haag. Um, that John McGinn's on the radar. I would happily take 50 to 60 million pounds off Manchester United for John McGinn.
I mean, I know that United pay a lot, but to be honest, Ben, every growing week, the amount that I take for John McGinn gets less and less by a couple of million. And I'm not going to sit here and slag him off because he's been an absolutely incredible servant to the club. He's been one of the
Oh
best
yeah,
players I've
yeah.
had in recent years. But I think for the role that he does in the team and for the money we could get for him compared to the 2.5 million we paid, if a club comes in with 30 to 40 million for a player who is also getting a little bit older, has had a couple of injuries and hasn't been the same since, um, as much as he's a crucial part of Villa to me, John McGinn, I love him to bits. I think someone it could be doing better in his position than he's been playing recently. He's been really out of form for a long time now, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, someone who I think could be perfect in that role. I don't think we'll sign him, but James Ward-Prowse would be fantastic in that right central midfield role, I think. There's loads of other players who could go into that midfielder. Yuri Tielemans is one that I've seen discussed as well. He's an adept passer of the ball, and I think a bit more passing forward and passing through the midfield would be very useful for our team. That's what we need, a bit of ball retention. So, as you say, Ben, there are worse things that you can get for John McGinn than a big stinking check from Man United, and the opportunity to go and buy someone who could really make a difference to the way we play our football.
Well, I think if you put it into a bit of context, that if you get 30, 40, 50 million for John McGinn in 3, 4 years, obviously I wouldn't want this to happen, but the way he's progressing, you're looking at potentially double that for Jacob Ramsey.
Yeah,
And he yesterday, I mean, they'd have been talking about that goal for 20 years if he'd have scored that yesterday.
I know.
That run through the whole of the Spurs defence, and Lloris pulls off for me one of the saves of the season. It would have been a tremendous goal. And you know, we say that lots are going to be leaving. I think he's got Coutinho, he's got Ramsey. If he gets that holding midfielder, if it's going to be Basuma who comes in, plus you've got Nakamba coming back from injury as well as a competition for places there, then all of a sudden it's starting to look a bit stronger. I think you can realistically look at moving Douglas Luiz and John McGinn and players like that on from the midfield, and I think that's where a lot of Villa's problems at the moment lies, that they don't. For 45 minutes they did yesterday, and it was great, but you kind of know that they're not going to do it week in, week out. So, but that's the area where Villa do need to start dominating games, and they're not, and they don't do that historically. So I think that if I was Steven Gerrard, and I'm about a million times less qualified than Steven Gerrard, but that's where I'd be looking at building my team, which what he knows as well. I mean, he was one of the best in the
Yes.
business in the history of the Premier League. So that's ideally what he's going to be looking to do.
Yeah, I mean Steven Gerrard and Gary McAllister are no fools as to what a good midfielder looks like. I remember back in November, the week after they signed, someone on Twitter basically said that they bumped into Michael Beale, who's another one of the assistant managers, and Gary McAllister, and having a little chat, as fans do. And the fan asked them, "What's the player that's taken you away? What's the most surprising package?" And they said, Jacob, the words I'm using is what they've said. It's that Jacob Ramsey's a ridiculous talent and one of the best they've ever seen. And ever since then, he's just gone on this meteoric rise from a good young midfielder with a bit of promise to a dominant midfielder. And he is the man we have to build that Aston Villa midfielder around. And I think Steven Gerrard knows that. I know that he likes John McGinn, but Jacob Ramsey continues to be the best midfielder on the pitch pretty much most weeks. I don't think he's been in his best form recently, if I'm being fair. I thought Morgan Sanson did really well against Wolves, for example, but he's another one that I think could, rather unluckily for him, be on the chopping block in the summer. I think, as we say, Steven Gerrard knows what a good midfielder looks like. It starts with a holding midfielder, and next to that holding midfielder, for me, it's another midfielder who can pass the ball, dictate the tempo. obviously we wouldn't be able to sign this player, but someone like Ruben Neves for Wolves, someone of that ilk, someone of that mould, that would be what Villa need to complement Jacob Ramsey in the midfield. And then that's when the back line has better protection. That's when the forward line has better service and better late runs into the box. And that's when I think Villa could become a much stronger team. And then if you tidy a couple of things up in terms of getting some more goals in the team, I don't know what they're going to do about the striker conundrum because there's two top strikers who want to play every week. And then the centre backs haven't really been performing great. So I think a new centre back will come in as well. Once you achieve those things, you're looking at a really serious spine that Gerrard can build a team around and a really good platform for us to go and have a good season next season, fine tune it, and then hopefully we'll just be watching Villa play really well week in, week out. It feels a long way away at the moment, but I think all we can do as fans is have faith at the moment and believe that it'll come.
I think it's interesting, and it might be interesting to work out that Steven Gerrard this summer could sell every player that Dean Smith bought in the previous summer. That's highly possible. It's been rumoured that Danny Ings could move as part of a swap deal for Bissouma. He's not sold on Bailey. He's not sold on Buendia at all in any way, shape, or form. And those were the players that came in for the Grealish money. If those players were to move on, I think that would be an interesting statement. One last thing before Villa, you're probably well aware that one of the greatest players to ever play for the club celebrated his 70th birthday this week. Dennis Mortimer, lifter of the European Cup and the league title in 1981. Yes, we did it. For anybody else who wants to put the two pennies worth, it did happen. We do live in the past because it's a past worth living in. Now, we talk about Jacob Ramsey and how good that goal would have been had he scored against Tottenham. So there was all over social media, happy birthday to the greatest captain of all that we've had. And 1979, I think it was. I can't remember who it was against. He picks the ball up, Dennis Mortimer, and drives towards the north stand, just as Jacob Ramsey did on Saturday. And he bounces off players and he brushes past them, real energy, and he drives the ball low into the net from the edge of the box. And as Jacob Ramsey was doing that, I thought, God, it's going to be like Dennis Mortimer. It could be like Dennis Mortimer. But there we are. You talk legend. You talk Dennis Mortimer.
Yeah, I mean, you can't see him right now, but he is on my wall. He epitomises it, doesn't he?
All right, I'm going to say this, and this might be controversial. I know people might be repulsed by this. I've stood at a urinal next to Dennis Mortimer, and it was it was at Villa Park in the press room, but it was one of the happiest moments of my life.
Yeah.
I will say.
But that's a nice long trip to the bathroom, wasn't it?
Yeah. I didn't follow him in or anything like that. It was it's just sort of. Well, yeah. Moving on.
Thanks for sharing.
West Midlands football podcast. It's just the two of us this week, myself and Dom. Looking back at the weekend action, Gav wasn't able to join us. He was celebrating his birthday on Friday. Was Gav? And thought, oh yeah, his team's playing on Friday night and they're in good form, going to Newcastle, and they come away with a 1-0 defeat. I have seen nothing on this game, Dom. I know it was Chris Wood. I think it was it a penalty? Chris Wood?
Yes.
So take it away if you know more than me.
I do. I managed to catch a bunch of the game, and I think the first thing we have to bear in mind with the game is that Wolves were playing with a very rotated 11. If you look at a lot of the players in there, some of the defenders, the midfield, even the forward line, the key players in the team aren't in that lineup through injury for various reasons. And I think it showed in the performance of Wolves. It looked like players were unfamiliar playing the way that they were trying to play, and Newcastle were just up for it. I think Wolves were intimidated by the atmosphere. I think Newcastle set up to be hard to beat, but good on the counter, and also they knew that Wolves could be got at, and Wolves didn't really have a way out of it. I think Bruno Lage just sort of standing there like, I don't really know what I can do. So it was a really, really poor display. Jose Sarr gives away another penalty. This one meant more than the one he gave away last week, unfortunately for me and Ben. But yeah, it's a performance that Wolves fans won't be happy about. It's a Friday night. It's a big away day at St James's Park against the team who fancy themselves. When it comes to this European race now, it's getting to the stage of the season where if they want to dream high and look upwards in the table, Wolves, then they've got to be winning these kinds of games. By no means is it easy, but even if you lose, you've got to play well. And I mean, I spoke to some of my Wolves mates who said, in their opinion, it's one of the worst performances they've put in this season. So, really bad timing on the Wolves result, really bad timing on the Wolves performance for them. And there'll be very many frowning faces in the Black Country who will hope they'll be putting it right next week before these European dreams seem to slip by again.
Well, they're in the same boat as Villa next week because as Villa would have played Liverpool, Wolves would have played Manchester City. So as those two are meeting each other in the FA Cup semi-final, and if that's half as good as that game was this afternoon, then
Oh,
we're in for a treat with a cup final place at stake. We'll come back to Wolves. That's the level we're trying to get to, isn't it, Dom? That's what we're talking about. This is this is what we're talking about. And
yeah.
and when you think you sort of you're miles off in terms of competing on the field at the moment with Tottenham, as we talked about, with Arsenal and West Ham. You put Wolves into that bracket as well. Then you've got above that, you've got Chelsea, who are for now okay. Their off field problems are their off field problems, but those top two, it's another stratosphere.
I mean, the stat they kept throwing about before the game continues to blow my mind. 338 points, 337 points since the managers took over. It's absolutely crazy. They're on a whole other level to any other team in the league, as is proven by the league table every season. I mean, Jose Mourinho said it was his best ever achievement as manager to finish second with his United side. I don't think he's wrong with that because City and Liverpool are phenomenal. I mean, the game today, you said it yourself, it was breathtaking football. It was balls in behind, last ditch defending, really good attacking football, switches of the play, really high quality goals and finishes, little bit of VAR drama, little bit of red card drama. It was a fantastic game, and I just the quality of those two teams, the speed at which they can play, the brutality and the ruthlessness that they've got, and just the quality of every single player on the pitch. All 11 of them, even including the goalkeeper, as Edison was keen to prove, are very comfortable with the ball at their feet and very comfortable playing quickly and playing with quality. And it's just a real treat for English football that we've got these two teams playing at the same time, and we should cherish this rivalry because I think it's absolutely fantastic and really healthy for the upbringing of English players and English managers to grow up and mature and learn the ways of football in this environment.
I didn't see Raheem Sterling as offside for that third goal. I thought that was. I don't know how you draw that lot, but okay. There'll probably be a national
Yeah,
discussion on Tuesday. I'm sure the lads are talking about it in the northwest as we speak. So we got to get back to Midlands matters. It could go one of two ways. You talk about the standard at the very top, and you sort of, I think, laterally amongst other sports, in that there are some sports where the cream rises to the top and the rest are absolutely floundering nowhere. So if you think about Rangers Celtic in Scotland,
mm.
and if you think about men's tennis, you've got Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, you had Murray, then you couldn't probably name another male tennis player. But then I look at darts with Phil Taylor in his pomp, and he was obviously the 16-time world champion. He was the standard bearer for the game, but he dragged the standard of every other player up, so
Yeah.
that it wasn't always the Phil Taylor show. Taylor would win most of the time, but you'd still see great games from other players who were still throwing high averages if you know your darts. Do you think with Manchester City and Liverpool, do you think they're likely to do that with the Premier League and raise everybody's standards in order to try and compete with them? So that puts Wolves into that category, doesn't it? That puts where Villa want to go. Do you think that will happen, or do you think it's going to become a closed shop and we're all just going to be floundering for scraps while those two are just reigning supreme at the top?
I think they already have raised the standard, but I just think they keep raising their own standard as well. I think that there are a lot of. I mean, every single week you've got Man City and Liverpool winning every week basically, and just doing a demonstration of how to attack. That's pretty much it. How to score goals. That is what they do best. How to snuff out counter attacks. How to control games. That is what I mean, especially in terms of Villa. Those three specific points of what we're trying to do. But I mean, in terms of other teams like Wolves and Leicester as well, that is just a blueprint that they can copy. I mean, there are so many clubs now that are playing different styles of football. I mean, take the German example. I mean, look at Jesse Marsh now for Leeds. I know that Marcelo Bielsa are even at Leeds. We're getting managers in the Premier League now who play a way that Guardiola and Klopp not necessarily created, but are the best at doing. And loads of teams now in the league, they play out from the back. They patiently wait for openings. They switch the play. They have wingers who cut inside. They play a 4-3-3 with a holder midfielder or a 4-2-3-1 or something like that. And I think they've had such a profound impact on the English game and on English coaches. And I know that we'll talk about this again a little bit later in the podcast, but I mean, a great example for me is Steve Cooper's Nottingham Forest, who I don't think play the frenetic gegenpressing style of Jurgen Klopp, but control games and play with such a ruthlessness and play in ways that remind me. I mean, when we watched Nottingham Forest Liverpool in the cup, there were two teams that looked so similar, and it's really a brilliant thing for the English game that, without naming names, we're moving on from coaches that play in certain ways and have certain beliefs and certain approaches which have, for growingly and increasingly over a number of years, shown to be behind the times. And I think English football is catching up, English football is moving on, but it just needs to keep going because the standards and quality of Guardiola and Klopp's sides only continue going up, and it's incredible, isn't it, really?
Can you see after the World Cup, for example, the FA saying to either Pep Guardiola or Jurgen Klopp, name your salary?
I wish.
I
I
think
wish.
a lot. Well. If City win the Champions League, then Guardiola's maybe looking for the next challenge, and realistically, international football is the only way he could go as far as that's concerned, because he's just about conquered every major league in world football, and he doesn't move within clubs within those leagues. It's a one job, isn't it? It's Barcelona, it's Bayern Munich, it's now Manchester City. So yeah, if England could play the Guardiola way going forward, that would be nice, wouldn't it? So yeah, Box to Box podcast is on Tuesday, where they'll talk more about the national stuff. This is me covering my tracks for forgetting what podcast I'm on, and it's the West Midlands podcast on a Sunday night, looking back at the weekend's action. Just want to say a quick hi to Paddy Range, an old mate of mine, when we used to train on the radio, and he's living down south now, down just outside of Brighton, and we've hooked up on social media in the last few days and reminiscing on old times. So he's watching right now, and he's sent us a message. Informative stuff right here. That's what Paddy has said. He's absolutely correct. So into the Championship, and we're going to go to Nottingham, the City ground. The match and the results. As far as Birmingham City is concerned, and their season is academic because they've got absolutely nothing to play for now. But it was all about Nottingham Forest trying to hang on to the shirt tails of Bournemouth. Possibly they've gone into third place, at the very least, cementing their place in the playoffs. As you mentioned, the job Steve Cooper has done there has been incredible. The flashpoint from the game in the 2-0 victory, the opening goal scored by one Keenan Davis on loan from Aston Villa, and he's doing very well. Question is, Keenan Davis, does he come back all the better for the move, or is he now at his level? That's obviously one that we're going to have to find out. But scores the goal. I haven't seen the goal or anything like that, but what does he do? He goes and gives it the big one in front of the Blues fans. Now, you smile, and it's all banter and stuff like that. But there's an undercurrent as well of players have to take responsibility, don't they, for their behaviour and for their actions. Okay, nothing happened here, nothing went wrong here, but it could have, couldn't it? And it's no, Keenan, no, don't do things like that. Don't poke the dog with the stick.
Yeah, there is an element of not poking the hornet's nest, to go another way of saying it. He's already given them the proverbial finger by scoring the goal and in front of the Blues fans. I remember he said before the game he was gonna provoke them a little bit, and he definitely did that. I'll describe the goal to you quickly because you're not seeing it. He basically gets the ball played through and just knocks it past the centre back, leaves him dusted, and then just powers it low and hard, far post of the keeper, who definitely should be saving it in my opinion. But I still think it's a very good finish from a really really tight angle it was as well. So in terms of the general Keenan Davis question, I think the book's a little bit too late from at Villa, unfortunately. I'm not. There's still going to be question marks over his fitness and his injury history, his age. I know he's still young, but he is like 22, 23. He's only got a year left on his contract. He said how much he's loving it at Forest, and they're going to come in with a 5 to 10 million bid. That's somewhere in that range, I reckon, in the summer. I think he could go on to become a Premier League player. I just don't think there's going to be a clear pathway for him. So if I was his agent, I'd be telling him to get at Forest, where he's really, really appreciated. And even if he doesn't score every week, he's setting up goals and he's dominating centre halves and creating space for other people. And Nottingham Forest fans love him. And I think him going there, I just want to see him happy, to be honest, because if I felt really bad for him having to sit on the bench basically for 2 years at Villa, and then whenever he got a chance, it'd be 5 minutes at the end of a game. So to see him enjoying his football and doing well at a club that clearly values and appreciates him and has a place for him, a club under a great manager playing great football who will be looking like they'll be in the Premier League sooner rather than later, I think it's the perfect place for Keegan to stay. And I think, as much as you could tell by celebration to City, he has that allegiance to Villa. I think letting him move on is probably best involved for all parties, to be honest. Mute again, Ben.
Twice now, twice.
I know.
It's because I breathe. You see, I breathe heavily, and there's a microphone, and
Yeah, it
people
makes
might
sense.
think it's a. I've already talked about following Dennis Mortimer into a urinal. I'm trying to get a reputation for myself here. So what I'm saying is, I've just seen the incident while you were talking. It's not really an incident, really. I mean, it. From what I'd heard described, Keenan Davis has gone and give it the big in front of the Blues fans. It doesn't actually stop his run to as he's celebrating. He lifts an arm up, whether it's a finger or
Yeah.
not, just out of shot. So not that big a deal, but there's just that kind of thing. As far as Blues are concerned, what now? Are they just in stasis now? Is that it now? Do they just ride it out? Because all of the positive things that we were talking about a month ago, that seems to have disappeared altogether now. They're not scoring any goals. They're not keeping clean sheets anymore. But for Derby and Reading's points deduction, it could have been very tricky. But they can relax. But what then? What happens then? I know it's old ground and we talk about it. What then?
I'm struggling, to be honest, because I wonder if the manager is gonna keep sticking around, because I think it depends how many of the players he's going to be allowed to keep signing, because he has signed a lot of players, and I think there is starting to be a growing sort of distaste, maybe a bit of frustration for Lee Bowyer in the Blues fans. I saw a few fans saying on social media about why they don't sometimes just go at teams and be more aggressive instead of letting teams play against them. And that's a sentiment I can reflect, because they have got some really solid players that they've signed. Some good centre forwards, good tricky creative players out wide, and a couple of decent midfielders. I know that some of the selections, I mean, leaving out Ryan Woods, who's always been a really solid championship player, to see him not getting as much minutes as he should for Blues is a bit of a mystery for me, to be honest. So I think Bowyer's sort of struggling to find his best team, his best formation, his best style of play, and I think the Blues ownership are happy with him. The fans a little bit less so, but in terms of where they go next, it just seemed like stasis. But they're going to have to. They seem like a mid-table club now, where they're just going to have to wait for the inevitable every season. Oh, Blues might go up, and then they might go down, and then end up in the middle. That seems to what be happening every season at the moment for Blues.
They seem like a mid-table club. Are they a
Yeah.
mid-table club? Because you mentioned Derby and Reading's points deduction.
Mm.
If any other clubs fall foul of the spending rules, you're probably going to see regularly now at least one club every season in the Championship gets a points deduction. That's just the way it seems to work out, and that's what's keeping Blues heads above water. My question is: you mentioned the signings that we made, and we agreed on the podcast that these were positive signings. I thought Taylor's come in and he's done well. There's Bakuna, there's Sunjic. I like Hernandez. I think in the Championship,
Yeah.
I think he's a good player. And as I say, I saw him in the flesh, and he stood out on the day as the one player who stood out. Do they need something to play for? Is that what it's about? If they were actually in the relegation battle with this group of players, would you actually have seen more from Blues than we have recently? There's no fire in their bellies at the moment.
I definitely think with some teams like Norwich, you can see how a survival fight can galvanise a squad and make them play better. But I think Blues fans would say, well, what's the point in waiting 40 games into the season to decide to start playing properly? Because they need to be putting in performances week in, week out. The whole point of league football is it isn't knockout football. You can have a couple of bad weeks and a couple of good weeks. All fans ask for is effort. In the West Midlands, we ask for effort and people to give a go and players to care. And the bottom line is that you have to get to a level where players are playing and putting in effort, regardless of whether that there's an impending doom surrounding their future or an impending doom surrounding the survival of the club's league status. So I definitely think Blues would be playing better if they're in a relegation battle because it galvanises every squad. But I think the manager and the players have to know that it's no excuse because there's 23 home games a season that at St Andrews that the fans will be expecting more at.
And the latest one comes on Friday, Good Friday, which means there's a full program of 3 o'clock fixtures in the Championship, and it's a familiar opponent, a team that's going to be very familiar to St Andrews over the last couple of seasons. Coventry City. Wow, are they in? Did they get a result today?
I know.
3-1 at Fulham. Again, one of those teams that have had a really positive season. That have, as far as where that's concerned, I'm no fan of Coventry City. I'll make that quite clear. I don't know if should they be one of the teams we talk about as a West Midlands club. I don't know. That's probably a debate for another day. But in their Premier League days, they regarded the game against Villa as their derby, and we didn't. And they sort of took exception to that. Like we thought of them as kind of like second-class citizens, which they were. And they went down, and 20 years they've not been back again. But the Coventry fans, with all the business over the Rico Arena and the ownership that they've had there, they've been to some pretty dark places. But as far as that's concerned, as I say, I'm no fan of Coventry City, but it is nice to see a historically stable football club, which they always were. They're always in the top flight, Coventry. It's nice to see them coming back.
It is, and it's really nice to see Coventry do well because, as you say, they're a local side. They're struggling a lot financially. They've sort of had to work their way up. They play some really nice football. They lost to the league's form side, Nottingham Forest, who we've already mentioned. Then they've got an instantly beat Fulham away from home, and I think that'll be a result that sticks long in the mind of Coventry City fans in years to come, and they'll go. That could be a result where if they kick on from here, they'll go, wow, that was a real turning point. That was a real point where I go, our club have just beaten a team who are going to be in the Premier League next season. And that's something that Coventry City fans haven't had the luxury of saying. It's also brilliant to see some of the players that they've got, some of the young players. Obviously, with my Villa biases, Callum O'Hare, their number 10, who was touted as the next Grealish. Every single week in, week out, he starts with them. When he first went there on loan, he really impressed their fans. He's earned his stay and he's in their team week in, week out, playing really well. Skillful, creative midfielder, loves to dribble, and again, he's just a bit of a player like Grealish, isn't he? It's good to see Coventry doing so well. It's good for the area, and it was a really big result for them, as you say. And I just couldn't believe it when I saw it. To be honest, I could not believe it.
They've got 5 games to go of Coventry. They are 6 points out of the playoffs, so it's not impossible. There's a lot of traffic they've got to negotiate though before they can get there. It probably would be too soon for them, but if they can positive results that they're getting at the likes of Fulham, they can take that momentum into next season. And as I say, Blues, it just depends on what Blues team turns up, and
Yeah.
we'll have to wait and see as they go into the Easter program. Staying in the Championship, it doesn't get any better from the weekend at the Hawthorns. West Brom going down to a 3-1 defeat um, at the Hawthorns against Stoke City on Saturday, and it's either one or the other now, isn't it? I mean, so like we just mentioned with Coventry, getting the results against Fulham midweek, terrific against Bournemouth, absolutely terrific, and then it's just gone back the other way.
Yeah, it's shameful. I mean, we talked with Villa about how when you have players that aren't quite up to the standard, they can be quite inconsistent, and I think West Brom are falling foul to that. And I know we talk about this a lot on the podcast, but I think Steve Bruce sometimes is going to look at his players and go, just do the basics for me, and sometimes I don't think they do the basics. Bournemouth haven't been in great form, and I think West Brom punished them really, really well. It was a fantastic win for them. One, to sort of get the fans on side, get the players on side, and I thought this could be a turning point victory where they start to do well, and they score, they get a goal against Stoke. Stoke, who haven't had their best season and have been in poor form, and they've come to the Hawthorns and they've turned them over, and it's embarrassing. You can't put in home performances against another local side like that. If you're West Brom and if you're Steve Bruce, they won't be happy with that. I keep saying they're going to have to look to the transfer window. There's some of those players in that squad who came in the summer and were supposed to be part of Ishmael's team. Alex Moat's the one who keeps getting called out. And they just don't seem up to the task of playing the way Steve Bruce wants them to play, of playing to the quality that they need to be playing at, and that's why it's another disappointing season for West Brom, and it's a real shame because I know that West Brom fans are not happy about it. I mean, I think 3-1 at home to Stoke. I mean, Stoke haven't got anything left to play for. They're not going to get to the playoffs, I don't think, as my understanding of the league table lies anyway. So
No, they're 10 points off the playoffs,
yeah,
in 15th at the moment. And I think what we saw. I mean, an Albion fan I heard on the radio yesterday said Albion took advantage of Bournemouth's openness with the way they play under Scott Parker, and obviously the fact that they're under pressure in trying to get sort of automatic promotion. Albion took advantage of that. Stoke were Stoke, and they couldn't cope with it. They couldn't cope with the aggression, the press, the tempo of Stoke. It must have been a horrific game to watch for 90 minutes, as far as that's concerned. And they couldn't cope with it. They couldn't deal with it. And this is kind of what we've seen. And they get to Friday, 3 o'clock, Good Friday, against Blackpool. Blackpool are one place below Stoke in the table. I mean, this is, if you go in, hope the sun shines for you and you can enjoy the experience of being at a professional football match, because I think you're going to see largely 22 players that aren't interested.
22 players with one eye on their holidays. They've been booking their holidays
Yeah,
the night before, playing with their
yeah.
feet up, and it's not good. Blackpool isn't an easy place to go anyway. But add to that the fact, as you say, I mean, I talked about how I think the Bournemouth win should be a massive lift for the morale. I think Stoke will have the opposite effect. That was meant to be the big turning point, the Bournemouth result, and then it wasn't. And I think players, fans, and the coaching staff will be suffering from that. And it's really hard to pick yourself up for a massive week. Well, I say a massive weekend fixture. I know that these aren't high stakes games now at this stage of the season, but it is massive for the fans because fans want to see their team win. Fans pay good money to go and see their team win, and ultimately it's important because fans prop everything up. So yeah, if I'm West Brom, I want to end the season well. I want to just end on a positive note to say, look, we've had a rubbish season and we all know it, um, but we've ended okay, and let's hope we can strengthen to that, add to that in the summer, and then next season get this club back to where it should be, which is the Premier League. And I think Steve Bruce is going to make sure that over the summer some changes are made, and maybe he'll pull off a bit of a John McGinn style bargain signing like he did for us in the
Well, yeah,
Championship.
did it. He's done it before. He could do it again.
He has.
The irony is that Steve Bruce is up for Manager of the Month for March. in the Championship. And you think, well, where's that come from? But in recent weeks, this is how infuriating it must be. I wish Jonathan was here with
Mm.
us now, but I'd talk to him about it. They've beaten Fulham, they've beaten Bournemouth. They came back from 2-0 down to grab a dramatic point against Huddersfield. The team's at the very top of the table.
Yeah,
They're getting results against. And Albion fans thinking, "Oh, we've cracked it now. We've sorted this out. This is what we're about." And okay, a home game against Stoke. It's never easy against any team in the Championship. It's a slog, and nothing performance. It's got to be so frustrating.
yeah, it has because I think a lot of clubs. I think Villa have done that before, where you might play a really difficult game and you beat a really good team, and you think, "Oh, this is it." And then it comes to a game where it should just be what is deemed a routine win for a team of that quality, and you can't do it, and it's really annoying. I think West Brom over the summer they need to find an extra level of brutality, an extra level of ruthlessness, and an extra level of confidence and aggression to control the game and suffocate opposition. The opposition that I'm referring to here being teams that we're just talking about that they should be beating, because clearly their game plan against these top teams is working. I mean, manager of the month for March for those big wins, everyone can see it, but they need to get those players in that can make a difference, and they need to play with more. Not even it's more than confidence. It's just like they feel like every time they feel like they're on the pitch, they need to feel like they're going to win and they're going to dominate the game and they're going to have 20 shots on goal and win, score 3 or 4 goals, and their fans are just going to enjoy a footballing show. And I think it's that kind of confidence and it's that kind of grace that an Albion team needs to build under Steve Bruce.
That's the funny thing, though. They were doing that. If you look
Yeah,
at the last 5, 6 seasons, Norwich go down, West Brom go up. The next season, it's the other way around, and
yeah,
they're the two yo-yo clubs that were passing each other by. And I think they just assumed they'll be up there again.
yeah,
And they picked a manager who nobody really knows anything about, but got a team surprisingly to the playoffs. Didn't really do their homework on it, and they kind of are where they are now. Moving to League Two, we talk about a new manager bounce. Walsall definitely had that with Michael Flynn, but that seems to have really disappeared now. 2-0 defeat yesterday for the Saddlers. We've mentioned on this podcast before how much we like the way that Michael Flynn speaks after games. He said he felt sorry for the Walsall supporters who travelled to Rochdale. Um,
that's a trip. That
that's a trip as well. It puts it into some kind of context when the manager comes out and says we couldn't even take a throw in properly today. That's what he said. We couldn't actually take a throw in properly. And
yeah,
we talked about it last week. He knows who's going to be at Walsall next season and who isn't. He's already assessing it. It's a good appointment for League Two, and I'm providing he's allowed to do what he wants to do. I'm quite excited for Walsall next season.
yeah. Seeing how their window goes, Walsall should definitely be could definitely be one of the promotion candidates for next season. As ludicrous as that might sound, especially to some of their fans who are having to watch some of the performances and the results that they've been getting recently. But we've always said on this podcast since he was appointed, it's a good appointment. It will come good. He will analyse what's wrong. He will identify what's wrong, and given time to do so, he will put it right. The number one thing he needs is the transfer window, and I think there's echoes of Villa in it. You've got a manager coming in with a squad of not his own players who are inconsistent to underwhelming, and he's saying in his press conferences. Look, the players aren't playing good enough. I want to play a certain kind of way. I've got certain aims at this club, and some of these players need to play for their futures. And ultimately, they're in a position now where they can just keep playing until the end of the season, knowing and planning and thinking ahead to what should be a really important season in the history of Walsall Football Club next season.
Absolutely, and we will finish on the only positive. And as I say, it is your second team Ticket hold for Solihull Moors was Don Phillips. 2-0 victory at Barnet, up to fourth now in the National League. So that's how that structure works. It's first place is automatic promotion, providing the Football League allow you in once they've assessed you. I think that's the rules, isn't it?
Yeah, but most clubs
You don't
get
just
up
go.
now, so that's not usually an
Most
issue.
do get up now. Most do get up, but it has been known that it's been vetoed in the past. Then you get the next two teams are in. They get a bye in the first round of the playoffs, and then
Yeah,
it's the next four to play each other to see who plays those two. I think,
yeah, that's correct.
and Walsall are not Walsall. Sorry, Solihull Moors are fourth at the moment. So, and I don't think they're two-legged affairs either in the National League. I might be wrong on that. Might be
No,
wrong on
they
that,
aren't.
but they aren't. So, yeah, why not? The juggernaut sort of rolls on, but they're only 2 points off of Halifax in third and 3 off of Wrexham. Realistically, they're not going to catch Stockport. 9 points, the difference there. 23-team league in the National League, so there's probably about 9 games to go. I would say just keep winning, just keep the momentum going.
Honestly, I definitely think the aim is going to be top three for them. I do think first is out of reach, whether it'll be Stockport reaching them or even Wrexham. I don't know if you've been keeping up with Wrexham, but I think the last 2 or 3 games they've scored like 90+ minute winners. Ryan
Yeah, they
Reynolds,
have.
the
Yeah,
Hollywood football, they've been absolutely flying, and Stockport have been stuttering and dropping a few points. I mean, about Halifax, I mean, Moors went there last week. I mean, that's a massive promotion game, and wasn't their best performance, but they grinded out a gritty 0-0 draw. And at this stage of the season, I think that was a massive result. The win away at Barnet is another brilliant win. Andrew Dallas scoring again. He loves a goal. A few of them really do love a goal. They made a couple of changes in the team in the midfield. I was thinking, as changing and changing up for the affair, it shows that they've got a squad with depth that can win and play well, and it's really exciting. I'm looking forward to the playoffs because they're the form team really in the league, and especially if they get that bye into the semi-final, that cuts away some of the risk value. And I was an attendee the last time they played in the playoff semi-final, and that was against Fylde at home. I remember it was like a loose second ball on the edge of the box, and their number 10 just scored like 15 minutes into the game, and Moores never really looked like scoring, and I think that was pretty much all she wrote. It might have been 2-0 actually. I think they got one towards the end as well, or 2-1.
yeah, I
But
think it was. Yeah, and there was a feeling at the time as well of like, oh, they've missed the boat here. That was the
yeah,
big chance, but they've kept going. They've kept building, and
they've
and they've and
rebuilt.
they're rebuilding. They've kept progressing. I mean, if you put it into some kind of context for those who don't know the National League very well, relatively speaking, here you run through the league table here, the list of names: Stockport, Wrexham, Halifax, Chesterfield, Notts County, Grimsby, Dagenham and Redbridge, Torquay, Yeovil, Southend, Barnet, who we mentioned, Eastleigh, Aldershot. Those are big clubs, relatively speaking.
Yeah,
That for a long time were well-established football league clubs. So I mean, I actually, from a neutral point of view, I'm delighted to see Stockport on the way back because they really did suffer. That they remember Chesterfield in the FA Cup semi-final against Middlesbrough
yeah.
back in the 90s and stuff, and took Middlesbrough to the replay with that 3-3 draw. Relatively speaking, like I said, these are big clubs, and they're mixing it, and they're holding their own. And I just think it's such a great story, and it's not getting enough publicity.
No,
It
nowhere
really
near
isn't.
enough.
It really isn't. And I know we've started talking about it over the last few months. There is, and I'm not allowed to say who, and I'm not allowed to endorse who, but some people I know very well who cover on the radio Solihull Moors week in, week out, and have done for quite a few years now, and are doing a phenomenal job with that. I can't mention obviously who they are. Somebody who I have an affinity with, but that's fine. But they're covering it and they're smashing it, and that's fine. You know, why can't there be a piece on Football Focus or Soccer Saturday or something? About
I
this
don't know.
story, especially with Cup as well. There was the
Yeah,
opportunity there, wasn't there, to say look what these boys are doing here.
Exactly. I mean, especially in Moor Green and sort of the origins of the club coming out of Moor Green and Solihull Borough, you've got two massive local clubs. This club was founded in like 2006, and compared to the rest of the league, not the rest of the contenders, compared to the rest of the league, they are on a shoestring budget. Let me
Yeah,
put this into perspective. Stockport Stadium, I think it holds about 15,000. They get attendances in that region. Solihull Moors' average attendance, which I do think could end up being a problem for them if they go up, is 1.5 thousand. Their revenue is a lot lower. They've always prided themselves on being a family club. They've always been that, and it's been a welcoming environment. It's been the second team for a lot of Blues fans, even for some Villa fans such as me. And the lack of this story of two local clubs that merge and a team that's just come and worked and nearly got there and then missed out, and now they've got a manager who's got a decade's experience in the Football League in charge. They've got some brilliant players. I mean, Manchester City were courting their striker Carl Hudlin. This is
yeah,
something that the Moors have never really had in their history. It's so unprecedented in football, and the scale of the achievement can't be understated. And as you say, I just wish more was done. And I think the one thing that would get more done, the one thing that I wish Solihull Moors would do, is go on an FA Cup run, like we've seen Kidderminster do, like we've seen
yeah,
Bournemouth do, because that would be
yeah.
so good for the club.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, and wishing them well. Let's check what they're up to. Upcoming for Solihull Moors. So they will be in action. They're at Wrexham on Good Friday at 3 o'clock,
Christ.
and Easter Monday they're at Stockport. So the next two games are going to tell us a lot
They are.
as far as Solihull are concerned. And yeah, we really do wish them well, and hope they can make. It'd be nice if they can. Nice trip to Wembley as well in getting into the football league as well if they're able to do that. I mean, that'd be absolutely tremendous. You see a lot of Blues fans who are claiming to be Solihull Moors fans when those tickets go on. Those tickets
Cheeky
go on
little day
sale.
out. They'll be
Yeah,
colouring yellow stripes onto their kit very
yeah,
quickly.
they will. They will. Oh, right. So we've gone over an hour. I didn't think that'd be possible tonight. So I'm actually really pleased. Hopefully Gav's okay. And it was quite late notice. The Box to Box podcast will be available on Tuesday at 8 o'clock. A lot of the national stories are going to be debated. We'll only have the Football League to talk about next Sunday, with neither Villa or Wolves in action because of the FA Cup semi-finals. But whatever you're doing, enjoy your football this week. Have a good Easter coming up, and we will talk to you soon. For Dom Phillips, I'm Ben Ellis. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.